Oshin of Oshin's View, and this is a special edition of Oshin's View that we're gonna be conquering today. First and foremost, I want to say rest in peace to my homeboy Terrell's mother, who's just passed away just a couple of days ago, and this actually triggered where I want to start up today. Today's edition is going to be called Mothers, You Only Have One. And this is not Mother's Day. This is not a ploy to pander towards women and things like that. It's just something that I felt the need to get off my chest. I don't know who needs to hear this. I don't know if people even want to hear it. But it triggered me because I thought of the last conversation I had with my mother, and not realizing until after I left the hospital that day that might have been the last conversation that we're going to have. But I don't want to speed through everything, so let's talk about it. In 2002, my mother fell ill. I wasn't really sure about what it was, but she's been working where she's worked there for over 30 some odd years at the time. It was hard for her to even miss days of work. So she would go in, because she used to always have this thing where she would say, they're gonna have to send me home. I'm not just gonna take off because I feel a little under the weather. So she had a crazy work ethic about the things that she did, and just how she carried herself and her level of professionalism. So she was out up until this point for a month. And she kept saying things like, I got all kinds of time, so this is just me taking my time. I didn't think anything of it. I'm not gonna say she was getting super up in age, because at the time she was 65. And she's been working a long time and everything. So I was like, for a person that never really takes off, this is well rested time. She never made it back to work. So one day I went to record some music in Brooklyn, and she asked for a ride, and it wasn't that I didn't want to give the ride. It was just I was already, I was 25 at the time. I was already into what I was into in life. She had just got me my car that previous Christmas. That was my first vehicle, so I'm ripping and running the streets every minute I can get. And I told her I had to record something, and she was like, well, I'll get your brother to do it or whatever. So I kind of not ignored it, but I was like, okay, well, he'll take care of it. I'll go record and whatever. So I went about my business and I recorded and everything else. And afterwards, so I called her up. He picked up the phone. He was like, well, she's in the hospital now. Everything is cool. They're going to keep her, for the day, just to make sure everything is straight. I'm not thinking anything of it. I'm just thinking to myself like, well, guess I got the house to myself tonight. So, I'm calling around the ladies and things or whatever like that. Yo, who want to come through? Thinking selfishly at the time. Because I didn't really think anything more of it than, she'll just be home tomorrow. So I go up there the next day. Tomorrow turns to, well, they want to hold me for a little longer. Turns to Monday. Then Monday turns to Tuesday. The next thing you know, she's there, and I have to go back to school. Because I had one more class left. And that was it. Literally one class. So I remember leaving right before it was time to come back to school. Didn't really have too much to say. She was more concerned about, well, be careful on the road, driving back and everything else. So I was like, okay. So a few weeks go by, she's still in the hospital. My thinking is, no news is good news, even though I know she's in the hospital. So my girlfriend at the time, she asked me one day, she was like, have you spoken to your mother like that? I said, well, my brothers, uncles, and them, they spoke, they up there with us, so she's fine. No news is good news. So she takes it upon herself to call the hospital. I didn't notice at the time. she comes into the living room with tears in her eyes, and she's saying, "You need to go see your mother. She's in intensive care unit." So I'm like, "What?" So now I'm just like, what are you talking about? So she was like, "I called up there. They said your mother's in the ICU." So she's from New York. She's from New York as well. And we was just like, okay, we packed up and we shot there. So we shot straight to Columbia Hospital. I walked in, and all I know was I didn't know at the time she was heavily sedated the way she was. I seen a lot of tubes in and out of her, and I just broke down. And I just couldn't take it. This is one of the strongest, if not the strongest woman I've ever known in my life. And now she's looking like the most defenseless person in the world. So I just couldn't handle it. So I leave, I go home, get myself together and everything. So I decided to come up there the very next day. So now my uncles and everything else, they come up and take care of business and everything just to be there. So I come back up there, and I damn near break down again the next day. But the doctor pulled me to the side. He said, "Son, by the time you come to the hospital, your mother is very sedated." He was like, she was up talking earlier. He said, "You come maybe when it's 2 hours left in visitation, she's asleep at that point, or whatever, yada, yada, yada." So he said, "Maybe if you come," he said, "No, maybe." He said, "If you come earlier, she'll be there, you'll be able to talk to her." So I said, "Okay, fine." So you already know what I did. The next day, I got up there first thing in the morning for visitation. So she's propped up, but she can't speak. She's writing. Now, my mother had an ill handwriting. Her penmanship was crazy. So the first thing I'm thinking when they have this pen and pad next to her bed, if she's up here going to be scribbling, then that just tells you something's wrong with her brain. That something's going on. Like, I'm not in the medical profession, but you can see those signs right there. So that was the first thing I was looking at. So she started writing and everything, and the pen was just flowing. It was her normal handwriting. So I took, I was good with that. And, I'm talking, she's writing back and everything else. Still not talking. I would rather her talk, but communication is communication no matter how you look at it. So this goes on for a few months. A few months go by, the tubes are out. Now she's talking. First, her voice was kind of groggy. Then after a couple of weeks, it got back to normal. So I'm driving back and forth from Morgan State to New York every other weekend. Get to her birthday is November 18th. And so it's always, of course, clearly a week before Thanksgiving. So she started talking about how she was ready to retire anyway. Never heard her talk like that, but when she talked about retiring, that was more so like, okay, I guess this was a little too much for her and she needs the rest. So she's going to retire. She was like, she already was set up for retirement and everything else. So I'm like, good, take some time to yourself, yada, yada, yada. So I started joking with her about Thanksgiving dinner. Like, "Dad, it ain't going to be no macaroni and cheese. I can't get this." Just having fun with it and everything. Because if you ever been around somebody that was sick, somebody that you care for, you love, everything else, I'm not here to tell anybody about their faith in God or anything you believe in, but you actually go through the steps. And I definitely had my steps of bargaining that I did with the good Lord. Like, looking back, I made a real presumptuous type of bargain. I assumed and I presumed that I had this whole life of great blessings that were waiting for me. And I had the nerve to say, "God, if all the blessings and things that you have planned for me, if those are on the table, I will forfeit all of those just to make sure she lives and she be fine." So that was my bargaining. I said, all the blessings that I assumed that were there, that were coming, I forfeit them if you can make her whole again. So as time went by, I want to just go straight to one of the toughest conversations, if not the toughest conversations I've ever had in my life. I get up there to the hospital early in the morning after a night of just hanging out and everything else. I get up to the hospital, and at the time I was 25. My birthday is November 4th, so her birthday is literally 2 weeks after mine. So we would always, talk our Scorpio junk and how we are with things or whatever. But this day felt different. It felt like we talked about everything under the sun from my life, from the time I can talk up until the moment. Now, if you're a parent yourself, you have young kids now, you might even have older kids. What you do, you give them jewels, because we all know there's a difference between being taken care of and being raised. And I was fortunate enough to be taken care of, and I was raised above everything else. I got a lot of morals and ethics and just things that my mother has said repeatedly over the years. They just sunk in. But what they don't tell you is those lessons don't really stick with you that hard until after the person is no longer there. It's not that you're ignoring it. It's not that you don't care, you're not listening. It's like they become more prevalent once that person's not there, because you start to hear and see them 1,000 times clearer. And just to not go into the exact whole conversation, what I remember is her telling me, she said, well, if this goes left and, I don't make it through this, she said, you have a kind heart, but I'm going to need you to start looking out for yourself a little more than you do now. See, now, I'm not going to make this about me, whether I'm selfish or not or things like that, because I know I'm not a selfish person. Have I done things before in my life that somebody could see as selfish? Of course, more than a few times. And I'm not going to blame that on my mother saying you need to look after yourself more. But because a lot of that would happen before she passed, it was after she passed and everything else. But I understood what she meant about, making sure you're fine there, because you can have a wife, you can have a husband, whoever, kids. I don't believe that somebody's going to love you the way your mother loves you. Your mother's love is totally different. And it's not about better or worse. It's just different. Few other jewels she hit me with. She actually told me to risk more, take chances, believe in yourself a lot more, and things like that. So this day, it always stuck out to me because we talked for like 8 hours. I'm talking about I fell asleep at the chair. She fell asleep, she woke up. I was just there the whole day. So after it was over, visitation was from 9 o'clock to, I want to say, 8 o'clock. I stayed the whole time, and I remember walking out the hospital, and as I was walking towards my vehicle, I just started crying, because something in me told me that was it. That was the conversation. Before she transitions, that's the conversation. Did I want to believe it fully? No, but an overwhelming feeling came over me. That was maybe a week prior to November 17th, which is the day before her birthday. I give her a phone call. I'm joking with her about her birthday and everything else coming up the next day, literally 24 hours, probably less than 24 hours. And she's telling me how my brothers and them are like, they're going to bring up her favorite robe and all these other things. And she's like, don't make a big fuss over me, yada, 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 because that's just how she was. So I told her, I said, well, we need to reach out to a few more of your friends, let them know that you're all right. Because, they keep asking me, I think they just want to hear your voice and things like that. So she was like, okay, I'll reach out to a couple. I connected on three-way with like 1 or 2 of them. They were happy about that and everything else. So I felt good about that. And she's no longer, like I said, she's talking regular now. She's sitting up. I thought the bargaining chip really worked. Like in my mind, I seen her come from with tubes and everything inside of her, and she could barely talk and write, to, in my mind, this is almost a full recovery. Oh, we about to be out of here in a few months or a month or so. We going home. November 18th, the very next day, I'm at work with my cousin, and I'm out in Forestville, Maryland, and I get a phone call. It's my brother, so I see it pop up. I'm thinking he's calling me so he can give her the phone so I can say happy birthday to her without. He calls me, and I'll never forget how that conversation went. He says, where you at? I said, I'm at work. He said, who are you with? I tell him I'm with our cousin. He's like, okay. Then the next thing he says is, hold your head. So now I'm confused because I'm thinking he's talking to our mother about holding her head, like with the phone. I don't know. That's just how it came into my mind. So then he was like, you hear me? So I was like, hear you what? What are you talking about? He took a deep inhale and was like, she's going. So I'm like, who's going? And where did they go? So he's like, he was like, Mimi is gone. So I was like, and mind you, I'm 26 at this point because my birthday had passed. I was like, where did she go? He was like, she passed. And I know I heard him say she passed, but it still didn't register. But when he said she passed and he took a deep exhale, I said, I'm on my way. And I hung up the phone. I thought I was keeping it together. I thought everything was fine. I don't even think, in my mind, I don't even think that I was reacting a certain way. I hung the phone up, and the tears just came down my face. And then it turned from sadness to anger in a split second. I threw my phone. It didn't break. It was a Nextel. Remember with the chirps and all that. They see that the phone got thrown. My cousin is with the manager of the site we were at. My cousin put two and two together real quick, and he put his head down. And so I could see the manager kind of ask him, like, what just happened? And my cousin says, I think my aunt just passed away. That's his mother. And so I bring up the manager because this manager did something that I'll never forget. And I've already spoken to that man at that time after I went through the funeral and everything. We were supposed to be at that site for about a week. That's when me and my cousin was doing drug testing and everything. Like, with the urine and everything. We supposed to have been there a week. If we don't be there for a week, we don't get paid because you have to go on site. That man literally took the paper and he said, well, you gotta go home. Y'all gotta go home. And I was like, in the midst of all that, I said, yeah, but I still gotta work. I gotta wait. He said, no, you have to go and bury your mother. That man signed off for all the days I was supposed to be there, and that was 2 weeks worth. Do you understand what I'm saying? He basically paid me for 2 weeks, knowing I wasn't gonna be there or just anything. And he said, don't worry about it. I'm not gonna tell your boss. He was like, I'm gonna sign off on it, and I'll just get somebody else in here. He said, go home and bury your mother. And I never forgot that because the man didn't have to do that. So of course, I got dressed and everything. We shot up to New York. And at that point, it was nothing that I could do. It was already done. My worst fears were already confirmed at that point. But I just wanted to be home. I wanted to be around people that felt about her the same way I did. And just be around my friends and everything else. I just needed to be around the love. And so I got back in the city. And my brother, he's a verbal cat, but he don't talk a lot. He does his talking through actions. And I gave him props because he tried his best to be that rock and be like, okay, I can't just not talk to him, And I remember I got out the car, he got out the car, he hugged me, and he just was shaking his head like, he was trying, he couldn't find the words, but he was just like, kidney failures and this, that, and the third. I was like, you ain't gotta say nothing. Like, it is what it is. And so that whole week up until the funeral, because she died on the Monday and the funeral was actually on that Thursday. So it was 3 days later. But My uncle Daryl, he's the one part of the media family that actually takes care of business and everything. So he was having different conversations with Mimi about, if this thing goes this way, you make this call, this is in place. Because she always had this thing about, she used to always say, when it's my time to go, y'all are not going to be burdened with cost and having to scratch up money and put money together. She was like, everything is taken care of. All you have to do is make the phone calls and everything is in place. I was 26, but I'm not even going to say I wasn't prepared to make those calls or do that, but she didn't have those conversations with me, like specifics, but she did have it with Daryl. And he followed everything to the T as the person that he is. And everything went. She always said, if when it's time for me to go, have it in the evening, because I don't want anybody to miss work coming to see me. Like that's just how she's always been. She's gonna think of other people and like, no, I don't wanna inconvenience anybody. And I remember driving to the funeral. I went by myself. So I drove, and it seemed like that drive from where I was at in the Bronx to Harlem, I normally get to that area literally like in 15 minutes. And it took me like a half an hour. I don't know how fast or slow I was driving, but I was just trying to avoid getting directly there. I'm playing Boys the Men's, Song for Mama, tearing up, whatever. But then I get myself together and I walk in, and it's nobody there. Not because nobody showed up, because it got dumb crowded, but I just was there earlier. And good thing, because I got there, I walked up to the casket, I pulled up a chair, and I just had a conversation with her. Just pretty much letting her know everything wasn't in vain. This is what I'm going to do moving forward. I'm going to still make you proud of me. Just having my personal conversation and everything. And by the time people came, I felt my cousin's hand on my shoulder. And then that's when people just started pouring in, and it got real crowded. But by that time, I was cried out. Like I was cried out, not forever, but I was cried out for that moment. And so people came up there, they spoke glowingly, of course, and everything. It was a real good send off. But they also had to have the second part in her hometown of Jacksonville, Florida, or whatever. And I didn't make that trip because I still had to work and other things I had to do and everything. And I kind of felt I said my goodbyes right there. You don't want to rehash that over and over. Once that casket is closed, you don't want them to open it back up. It's just, it plays on your emotions and everything. At least that's how I felt. And I didn't want to go through that twice. Once was enough for me. And things just been out of bed, and it's just like with the passing of my friend's mother, and a lot of other people I know have their mother has passed away as well too. And I get all those phone calls like, yo, how did you deal with it? Like, this is what I'm going through. Look here, I'm a person, I talk a lot, but I'll listen to everything you gotta say. I'm not going to interrupt you. And I just gave them an outlet, not a platform. I just gave them an outlet for them to get all their tears out, all their thoughts and everything else. Because that's the best thing that you can do. See, the thing about it is this, for people that are watching this, whose mother is still alive, and you can pick up the phone and call them, and you can still have Mother's Day brunches and lunches and dinners and everything else. It's not a warning, so I don't want this to come across like that. I made a comment as a child before. It was a funeral that my mother paid for, and it was like 4 or 5 in a row. Now, granted, the context of that is all of these people were clearly in their 90s, lived a nice, full, long life. But death is death, and you can't really prepare yourself for it too much. And I made a comment. I said, Ma, I hope I die before you, because I don't want to deal with that. And she stopped doing the dishes, and she said, don't ever say that. She was like, when I die, she was like, you will go on. She said, you'll be hurt, but you will go on. She said, if I have to bury you, I can't go on. As a child, I didn't understand that. Now, for a 47-year-old man that has a child, it didn't take this long for me to understand, but I did even clearer, especially when I got a child. To be perfectly honest, I didn't think of my mortality until I actually had my son. That was the first time in my life where I thought to myself, wow, somebody has to outlive me. And I knew about death, I know the effects, I know all that stuff. But in my mind, I'm just feeling like I'm gonna be around forever. But then once my child came, I was like, somebody has to outlive me. So I say all that to say, if you're in any type of argument, you haven't spoken to your mother, y'all may not be seeing eye to eye for whatever reason, get it together. Get it together. Have that conversation. Have the tough conversation while both of y'all can communicate with each other back and forth. You don't want the tough conversation after the fact because it'll stick with you for the rest of your days. If it's something that can be mended, first off, it's your mama. It's hard, be hard pressed to say it can't be mended. Now, I'm not in everybody's business, and some things are deplorable. I get it, but most things aren't. Most things are a conversation, a phone call, a visit away. And this is no disrespect to the men that are fathers in his life, because I didn't make this to disregard or disrespect the fathers that are out there, because I understand people who have different relationships that with their mothers and their fathers. But this time I was actually focused on the mothers, just for the sake of this particular episode. It blew my mind a few times. I've heard friends, and I will never say their name, I've heard friends say things like, man, I don't mess with my moms. And I'm like, you don't mess with your mother. That was a mistake on my end. And I'm gonna tell you why it was a mistake on my end. I assumed, and 2 years ago, I assumed that everybody has a great standing relationship with their mother. I just assumed that. It's no way. I can recall any time in my life where I had beef with my mother or we weren't seen eye to eye. Now, there's been times she's disciplined me. There's been times that she might have told me no to something that I really wanted to do, and she gave me her reasons. I may not have liked it. I may have been a brat about wanting to get things when I want to get them and how I want to get them, and for whatever reason, she didn't deem it the right thing for me to do at the time, and I was upset. But I would slam the door in the house upset. It wasn't the don't speak to me anymore, I don't mess with my mother, let me get up out of this house and everything else. So for those that have mothers that already transitioned, we understand that it's a club that you want to stay out as long as the Lord allows you to not be in it. Because once you're in it, you're in it. And it's like a bond that you might have with somebody else because you really can truly relate to that person. Because I'm gonna be honest, it's nothing to brag about, but you'll never understand the severity and the feelings and emotions behind losing a parent, especially a mother, until it actually happens to you. Some things that for those that haven't lost their parents or anything, and parent is still alive, their mother, one of the worst things you could say to somebody is, I don't know how you can go on. I don't think I'll be able to do it. I understand the sentiment behind it, but believe me, it comes across as sensitive because you make it sound like it's some real Herculean, however you pronounce it, thing to do that you don't think you'll be able to deal with. And none of us thought we would be able to deal with it. None of us believed we even wanted to deal with it. But when it happened, and you have no choice. This is a different level of adversity that you have to face in your life. So try to stay away from making that comment. And when somebody's talking about their parent or how things go, the best thing you can do is just listen. Just be there for them. Let them cry. Let them vent. Let them repeat themselves. And that's that. That's the best thing you can do for them. So, for those that are part of the club, I'm always an open ear to bend, to talk to, cry, shoulder cry, or anything you need. Just get in contact with me. And you know, I always put that out there. And for those that are fortunate and blessed to still have their parents with them, cherish them while they're here. Cherish your kids. Cherish everything, because now a lot of y'all are parents. Because we don't know when it's time to go. And once it happens, it happens. Like I said, mothers, you only get one. And for the ladies that are mothers on here, don't have back and forth with your kids. You know, you discipline them, you teach them the right thing, raise them the right way, but always keep that line of communication open. Never make it to a point where y'all going, it's periods of times where you're not speaking, because most times it's not that serious. Rest in peace to all the people that lost their parents, and blessings to the rest of the ones that parents are still here. This is Oshin. Peace. See you next week. Whew.